Hello and welcome to the Your Revolution podcast. The Your Revolution podcast is a collaboration between Revolution Personal and Performance Training in Melbourne and the Me Project. The purpose of the Your Revolution podcast is to inspire you on your mission of betterment. Each week on the podcast, you'll meet game changers who have created extraordinary lives, and you'll listen to stories and lessons to empower you to make the changes necessary to your life. The Your Revolution podcast is committed to fitness, health, nutrition, mindset, community, education, empowerment, and betterment, and we hope that you can take what you learn here and apply it to your very own revolution.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 108. We're here with Naturopath and host of the Jade Walker Way podcast, Jade Walker. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be here.
No, thank you. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. Like I said, we are super excited to have you on today and really looking forward to this episode. Are you ready?
No?
No,
I am definitely ready. I'm ready to go.
Awesome. So before we dive in, I thought it'd be a good opportunity for you to firstly give our listeners a little bit of an intro into who you are and I suppose your journey through health and fitness.
Oh, that's a loaded question.
It's a very loaded question.
Okay, yeah, so I'm a naturopath. The difference being that I'm a qualified naturopath, so I have a Bachelor of Health Science.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically, if anyone doesn't know what a naturopath is, we're kind of like a nutritionist plus herbal medicine.
Yep.
And we have a very holistic approach to health so that we look at the whole body and the nutrition, the body, the mind, and the environment as well. So we really look at everything.
All bases covered.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I like it. Cool. And I suppose, can you talk about what sparked your interest in wanting to pursue a career through health and fitness, in particular, I suppose, alternative medicine?
Yeah, good question. So it all started probably, it's getting close to, 8 years ago where the first spark started, I guess. I started off as a journalist, living the kind of, just young, slightly unhealthy life where I ate a lot of crap, I guess you could say. Not necessarily I was never a McDonald's person or anything like that. I was more of the gourmet person. I loved the locally made sausage rolls and the locally made cream buns, and I was a sucker for the butter chicken and naan bread down the road from the local Indian place, and so anyway, and that became, because it was a very stressful job, to be honest. As a journalist, we had a lot of deadlines. We all hated it. We were all stressed. We hated our editor. So all those little things, it was kind of like what a cigarette is to a smoker. The food was to me.
Yeah.
And so we would eat at our desk all the time. And naturally, I started to gain a little bit of weight. But also, if I'm being honest, I had an unhealthy mindset and lifestyle outside of work as well. So I would party a lot, take drugs, and I wasn't happy.
Yep.
And what really set me onto my path was, and there's a long story behind this too, but I initially went vegan, and I'm not vegan anymore, of course, but that was what opened my eyes to nutrition. And so long story short, I moved from South Australia up to Townsville and started studying a Bachelor of Science. I wanted to do zoology or marine biology. But I actually started working at the Happy Herb shop, which is as the name suggests, it used to be called Happy High Herbs, and that it has all your herbal medicine. And so with that, I started to learn all about herbal medicine, and I'd never actually heard of all these herbs before and how they can help, and that opened my eyes. So, and because I was also very interested in nutrition, it was really everyone else around me that was encouraging me to do it. So in the end, I enrolled into a Bachelor of Health Science in Naturopathy at Endeavour College of Natural Health. And here I am now.
Here we are. Okay.
That's the shortest possible way I've ever explained that.
You've actually done a pretty good job. Well, I have actually listened to, as we did mention earlier on, Jade actually has her own podcast, the Jade Walker Way. So I really recommend you have a listen. And that first episode was a really good one. Obviously goes into a lot more detail into that as well. So there's a little plug there. So if you haven't listened to it, listen to it.
Thank you.
Now I suppose to go on back, you did touch on what a naturopath is, But can you explain in your own words how you differ from a dietitian, a little more a nutritionist? Because I think a lot of people kind of will get those three mixed up.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and interestingly, I've worked in a clinic with all three of us, like a dietitian, nutritionist, and naturopath.
Peas in the pod?
Yeah, and actually there were 5 naturopaths at this clinic.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And 1 nutritionist, 1 dietitian. And we all still, had clients. But anyway, so there's a question I got asked a lot. And I mean, first of all, the biggest differentiation between myself and both of those others is that I have the herbal medicine.
Yeah.
They don't.
Okay.
However, like we all have our benefits. So obviously I still do nutrition, and personally I have a really strong focus on nutrition. Whereas like some naturopaths are really strongly focused on herbal medicine.
Yes.
So I guess it comes down to a little bit of individuality, but just to compare, like for example, when I worked with Marina, she would really hone in on like getting people the good nutrition, like the dietary plans and like exactly what they should be eating for breakfast, lunch, dinner, that kind of thing. Whereas I would be more so just like, it was a little bit more broader, and like obviously I would touch on the nutrition, but I wouldn't necessarily be writing them an actual like diet plan. It would be more about, okay, your diet at the moment is quite processed carb heavy. We want to reduce those processed carbs and replace that with more like complex carbohydrates and protein. And then I'd give them a few pointers, and like I do have a lot of resources I give people on where to go. So look, it's a little bit individual, but certainly the herbal medicine part would be the main differentiation.
Yeah, no, that's quite... I should also mention just quickly on Marina. So Marina was on my a few episodes ago, episode 106. So she is a clinical nutritionist. Actually works at Revolution here on Thursday nights with myself. So yeah, just so everyone make clear who Marina is.
Marina?
Yeah, who is Marina? Now, I suppose you did touch on, I suppose, some of your methods, but can you, I suppose, talk how you're able to... just certain ways you diagnose sort of health issues that a client may present to you. Do you have certain, are there certain tests, like sort of health tests you run in particular, or do you refer to, I guess, another practice, like a GP, to get certain sort of tests? How I suppose, do you,
Yeah, really good question. First of all, little disclaimer, naturopaths will never diagnose. We're not actually allowed to, although certainly we steer people into the right direction.
Very similar to myotherapy. We called it we frame it like a clinical impression.
Yeah, I like that. We don't use that, but I like that.
Yeah.
So often though, as you would know, you get pretty good at it, and you're like, look, I'm pretty sure it sounds like endometriosis, but I just want you to see a GP and go to a gynecologist and get a referral, like that kind of thing.
Okay.
So in terms of answering your question though, on like, what are we doing, what tests are we doing, that kind of thing. So the difference between a naturopath and say, I don't even want to bring in names for other modalities, because I don't want to sound like I'm bashing on anyone.
Sure.
But there are some modalities where it's literally in and out. It's like 5 or 10 minute consult, whereas an initial consult with a naturopath is 1 hour. And the reason why, and to be honest, that goes so quickly, and sometimes you're like, oh, we need an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But is because we're taking the time to go through absolutely everything. And so just for example, say someone comes in and they're getting a lot of food intolerances and bloating. First of all, I still want to look at everything else, not just the gut. So we would be saying, okay, what happened in your medical history? Were you born cesarean or vaginally? Were you breastfed? Were you not breastfed? Did you have antibiotics in the first couple of years of your life? Because research shows that can affect your metabolism and make you more prone to allergies. So there's all these things that can start from the moment you're born, even when you're in the mother's belly. Like we want to look at all of that, because that's going to affect where you are right now. Yeah. And so if we can backtrack and figure out, we're like detectives of the body.
Yeah.
And so we don't just stop at, oh, this is your symptom, here's a Band-Aid.
Yes.
We want to figure out where's that root and how do we pull it out? Or how do we nourish it to grow in a different way? So that would be in a nutshell.
I really like that point you just made about I guess, not offering, I suppose, just like a Band-Aid solution for one. But I suppose you do touch on this a little bit, but it sounds like, because my next question was going to talk about just to give us an idea of what an initial cold salt would look like, but it sounds like it's very thorough. It's going through all your history and a lot of, I guess, getting as much information as possible. And it sounds like even some of the information maybe they don't see it as very relevant, but there could be things, like the smallest thing, like you sort of said, coming from breastfeeding to anything. Like, it could be really anything.
Absolutely. And for some people, and this is why I really try and like gear up my clients as best I can before they start the process, so that they know what I'm doing, because for someone who's never been to a naturopath before, it can be a little bit alienating and also just confusing as like, because it's
for sure,
why do you want to know like what my nails look like, you know? Because they are all signs of your health and your vitality. So, and you also asked about what kind of tests we do as well.
Yes, I did.
And so in clinic, I mean, I do a lot of remote consults now, like, which is great. You know, I see people via Skype these days, and so anywhere in the world people can see me. But when people do see me in person, I may do like blood pressure and temperature, those kind of things. We do a lot of observation. And this is a technique that is really, it's a lost art. Yeah. And like you were saying with how hands are so important.
Yes.
It's the same thing as like, you know, if I were to look over your body, there are 20 different signs that I could look on your body right now and know what's going on in your health. Like, for example, and just for listeners, this is not what I'm seeing, but as on Greg, but like, for example, I might look at his nails and notice that there's horizontal ridging in the middle of his nails, and that will tell me that perhaps a month ago you were really sick. Or if there's a lot of indentation and pitting in your nails, that could indicate that you've got some mineral deficiencies.
Wow, okay.
And this isn't just like woo-woo. This is science. Like, it's in the science. There's actually research papers that show, like, there's one paper that has something like 20 different signs you can pick up on the body. Like, there's another one that shows if your earlobe has a crease in it, which you start to see in the elderly, you have a higher risk of cardiovascular disease.
Wow.
So there's so many different signs we can look, and like, it, you know, it's a lost art. There's a really good TED talk from a GP who actually talks about how much that's a lost art in doctors. So,
It's quite right. And even with my studies as a myotherapist, and something we always got touched on or taught by lecturers is really looking at the person as soon as they walk in, the moment they actually get up the chair. I must say, I probably do forget it sometimes, because maybe I'm just thinking of like the obvious sign, like maybe they've got like a limp, for example, but it's a lot more than that. So you're right, it's very much a lost art. Now, I suppose going back into your expertise, what are, I guess, some of the areas that you particularly specialize or are really passionate about?
Yeah, so big ones for me are, so when it comes to gut health, I have a big focus in SIBO, which stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which accounts for 80 to 90% of IBS sufferers. And so a lot of people with IBS don't even know that the reason why they have IBS is because of SIBO. Yes. And the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because I've had SIBO myself. Okay. And I had to treat it 3 times to get rid of it.
Wow.
And apart from that, gut health in general, however, every holistic practitioner, such as naturopaths and nutritionists, will always have a strong focus on gut health, because it is at the root of everything, just about. Then I have a strong focus on women's health, particularly endometriosis, adenomyosis, PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. So those particular conditions are quite rife these days, and a lot of women don't realise they have them. And because I've personally suffered from certain things in my life, such as excruciating period pain, I actually just found out the other day I have a fibroid that no one cared to tell me about. And so I feel like, I guess you could say, a voice for women who don't know where their rights are with their body and what they're entitled to know. Because, for example, with myself, like, I've been going on this journey for 15 years of trying to get answers, and no one's ever giving them to me. But I knew that what I was going through wasn't normal, but everyone kept trying to tell me that it was.
Would you say more like you were misdiagnosed a lot of the time as well?
Not even.
Or maybe just not
I
sort
was
of
not
troubleshooting?
diagnosed with anything.
Just not going those extra steps and trying to find out a little bit more, or...
Yeah, so for example, so I suffered from extreme period pain, which is what we call dysmenorrhea. And it's not just like, I can just have a little heat pack on there and I'll be right. I've been to the emergency department twice for it. I had to leave a yoga class once, like breaking out in a sweat in the most agonizing pain. I had to drive myself to hospital.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's like, it's intense pain.
Yeah.
And like 10 out of 10. And so when I was younger, like my mum was a nurse and she was like, Jade, you really need to get this investigated. It's your body, this isn't good enough. Because I was constantly going to my GP, and granted male GP, and like not being sexist, but to be honest, the male GPs back then often didn't understand what the woman was going through. And anyway, so they would often like quite literally say to me, yeah, but you're a woman, you go through that every month.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is just bullshit, because no, that's not normal to feel like someone's cutting out your uterus every month.
Yes.
Like once a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had ultrasounds. They kept telling me everything was normal. And then finally I pushed for a laparoscopy, which is where they put the scope in and actually physically have a look. And at the moment, that's the gold standard for diagnosing endometriosis, because it's the only way you can figure it out.
Okay.
There's no blood test. The ultrasound won't pick it up unless it's really severe. Anyway, and like even the gynecologist was saying like, I don't think that's necessary. I don't think we need to do a laparoscopy.
Do you think they're quite apprehensive to do it?
Well, back then they were, because there is this explosion in research and an awareness around endometriosis now. There are more gynos that are becoming a bit open. With that said, I'm still coming up against brick walls when I speak to GPs, and they don't even bother to ask me, like I'll bring it up and I'm like, I really think I've got endo, and they're like, oh, okay, anyway, moving on. Like they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it affects 1 in 10 women.
Wow. Yeah.
And it could even be higher, because a lot of women are walking around not knowing they have it. Yeah.
That's a good point. Okay.
So I could talk about that one for a while.
No, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously we are going to obviously touch in some of these areas that you're obviously very passionate about, so absolutely later in the podcast. I guess another area, slightly deviating, can you, I suppose, talk about some of the resources that you've used, or maybe resource or people, or anyone's influenced you or helped you along the way, and I suppose also leading us another little side segue is some of the products you also use, such as your large tea line. Can you tell me, I suppose, what kickstarted an interest in that?
I feel like that was a 3-part question. Which was the first part?
Okay, let's go. I suppose let's go first off talking about, I suppose, people that have influenced you.
That's right. Cool. Before I go on to that, I didn't get to mention the third thing I have a key focus on, which is chronic fatigue syndrome as well.
Yep.
But anyway, moving on. So influence, to be honest, like I'm a huge podcast listener, and I reckon that's where I get a lot of my extended information from. Obviously, I had the 4-year full-time degree, and there's, always further education that I do, but a couple of my favourites, I love the ATP Project podcast, so the ATP Science guys. So they actually do have a product range, which is really good. Like I personally use practitioner grade subs, but they do have good stuff. That's not what I'm here to talk about though. But they are amazing with the information. They talk about every kind of condition. I get a lot of my education from FX Medicine podcast. They are solely targeted towards the complementary and alternative medicine modalities.
Absolutely, yep.
They're really good. And probably one of my favourites as well, more specific to women's health, Dr. Lara Bryden. She's a naturopath who studied her PhD in women's health, particularly around like PCOS, and she's got a really good book called The Period Repair Manual, and I swear every woman has to read that book.
Yeah. Okay, well, we might have to put that in the show notes section for sure.
Definitely.
Now, I suppose the influential people, because we actually experience as well, and you did kind of a little touch on in terms of podcasting is with Hamish and Andy.
Oh my gosh!
Great little story. So before we actually started recording this, we caught up for coffee. I was like almost an hour late, so anyway, but that's another thing. But as we're going, Jade was whispering me. I didn't actually full catch it at first, but we ran into Hamish and Andy just on the street in South Melbourne, and obviously I found that they were a big influence to you. And
yeah, oh my God, I'm still reeling from the fact that I met Hamish and Andy. I literally hugged them, then got a photo with them. And how good were they? They were so cool.
Such gents, yeah.
And they picked up on our name straight away and were using, they were like, so Jade, da-da-da, so what are you guys doing? And they were awesome. So I guess I understand why you brought that up, because quite literally, Hamish and Andy were the first ever podcast I listened to when I was younger. I'm pretty sure it was 14, 15 years old. And this was when podcasts first came out, and not many people were really doing it. It was usually the big guys.
Yeah.
And I used to listen to them all the time. I would put it on to fall asleep. They were just so funny. Literally made me laugh out loud. And I always used to think to myself, I'm going to do that one day. I'm going to have my own podcast. Yeah. And I told Hamish and Andy that, and they laughed, and then Hamish joked and goes, and you figured out it's pretty easy, hey? And I'm like, yeah, it is. Oh, so funny.
I thought that was absolute gold just before.
I couldn't believe it. Just before we were about to do podcasts.
Literally just before we're about to begin.
Unbelievable.
We bumped into them. So, that was... thought I'd mention that little story. So, now I suppose we're actually going into topics now. One of the big ones, which I think I know you'll have a lot to talk about, is gut health. Now, I posed this question to Marina when I had her on the podcast, but I always like to ask it again, only because people may think it's a silly question, but how can you tell if you actually have good gut health?
Oh, that's such a good question. So it's multifactorial, and it can present in different ways. For obviously the first and foremost thing that is pretty obvious is you're going, do you have bloating, reflux, indigestion, discomfort, constipation, diarrhea, hemorrhoids? Do you have any one of those things? Because if you do, then there's something wrong with your gut. So to flip that and say, how do you know if you've got good gut health? You don't have any of those things. Questions. Yeah. So, naturopaths always joke because we love talking about poo. We genuinely, and people are like, oh no, this is really gross to tell you this. And I'm like, dude, it's fine. It's fine. Tell me, what colour is it? What's in the stores? And we have this thing called a Bristol stool chart that we often get people to look at. And it's basically a chart system that's it starts off with really constipated and works its way down to really watery, and it's type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There's scale.
Yeah, and there's little images that people can point to so they don't have to describe
Oh, really?
Yeah, literally. It's a really useful tool. It's been around for a very long time, and it's really useful. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But actually, just to quickly go on though, so like I said, they're the obvious ones when it comes to gut health. However, some people may not have any of those symptoms, but they're getting a lot of skin conditions. Okay. So quite often even eczema, flare-ups of eczema, acne, just weird hives and patches, they are golden signs of bad gut health. Gut health. Yeah.
That's really, it's really
poor
fascinating.
immune function too.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I suppose further expanding on that, can you, I suppose, talk about the further impact of gut health and how I guess it can really impact, like you mentioned all these things, how it can really impact someone's energy levels and I suppose their emotional and mental well-being?
Oh, very good question, something I'm very passionate about. So two-part question there. First of all, energy. So as I was saying before, I have a big focus on chronic fatigue syndrome. And this is a condition that's not just your general malaise here and there. It's proper unrelenting fatigue for more than 6 months. Yes. And so with CFS, people will tell them those who are suffering from it that it's a life sentence and there's nothing that they can do about it, which is a load of shit.
Yeah.
And that's because no one's healing their gut. So the reason why poor gut health can cause problems with your energy levels is multifactorial. But first of all, very simply, if you're not absorbing nutrients effectively, then your energy cycle or the Krebs cycle will not be able to turn effectively.
Okay.
So, for example, we know that certain B vitamins are essential to make ATP, the energy currency. And so if you're not absorbing those nutrients because you've got poor or compromised gut health, then your energy is not going to work properly.
Yes.
The other thing as well is that you've got leaky gut syndrome, or more technically termed intestinal hyperpermeability, and that means that there are certain undigested particles, toxins, proteins, that kind of thing, and bacteria, endotoxins, that are getting absorbed across the gut wall into the bloodstream and wreak havoc on the body. So that's where they cause brain fog, poor energy, just feeling crap, basically.
Okay. No, very interesting. Yeah, actually, I suppose you did kind of touch on this as well. So, I mean, but I'll pose the question anyway. But you did mention about, I suppose, the potential symptoms. And I found that was really interesting because obviously there's real obvious ones, but I just thought you could go a little bit more into those more, I suppose, complex ones as well.
Oh, yes. So we were going to talk about how mental health and gut health.
Yes, yeah.
So there is a lot more people becoming familiar with the term the gut-brain axis, and that is where there's a bi-directional link between the way your brain works, so your mental health, and the way your gut works. And the reason why it's bi-directional is because they can both trigger each other, and then they get into this vicious cycle. So anxiety, depression, and it just that general not feeling quite right mentally can be because of something going on in your gut. So particularly IBS and anxiety are very intrinsically linked, but at the same time, like, it could have been stress that caused the IBS.
Stress related,
Or it could be IBS that triggered the anxiety. And then all of a sudden they're in this vicious cycle and they keep triggering each other until someone comes along and like stops that chain reaction.
That's really interesting. I can go from like two different angles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the way, just to go on a deeper level of how that works, it's a connection of so the vagus nerve that connects the two. It's a stimulation of that, and so there's research that shows that the bacteria actually stimulate the vagus nerve.
Yep.
And can control what you want to eat, the decisions you make. So if you have bad bacteria, that bad bacteria will stimulate your brain to say, give me the sugar, So it's pretty interesting.
No, absolutely. Now, there's another interesting fact that I've kind of read, for a population like Australia, got a little over about 20 million people, they say there's at least 1 in 2 people that have some sort of gut issue. Can you, I suppose, further talk about the potential triggers to this and, I suppose, ways or strategies we can to combat these sort of gut problems?
Definitely. So obviously lifestyle is a huge one. At the top, like, I always have this visual iceberg in my brain. So the top is always like what you see going on. So like, your signs and symptoms.
Sure, yeah.
But like underneath, there's all these triggers that you weren't aware of, such. And to be honest, the biggest one is stress.
Yes.
And because from an evolutionary perspective, stress, obviously, it was the fight or flight response. And when we are in fight or flight, we release cortisol and adrenaline, and that was a protective mechanism to help us get away from the saber-toothed tiger. And so our body nowadays, in the modern world where we're not being chased by an animal, it can't differentiate between the stress of that and the stress of our shit job. Or having a family to look after, or, all those things. Like, it doesn't know the difference. It's still going to say to the body, I don't have the energy to invest in digesting properly or being fertile or having a good immune system.
Yeah.
I only have the energy to get away from danger.
Uh-huh.
And so if we continue to stay in that fight or flight response, suddenly your gut becomes compromised because you don't produce digestive enzymes anymore. You don't produce enough hydrochloric acid to break down your food. Therefore, you're not assimilating your nutrients effectively to take those on, which will help with your health.
Yes.
On top of that, obviously, we're all eating a lot of processed food. We put all these chemicals on our body and spray them around us, and there's car fumes we're breathing in. I mean, look, you can go down a rabbit hole.
Yes.
And I try not to focus on that too much because there's a lot of things that are just out of our control unless we live on an island.
Yeah.
So you just have to do the best you can, but there's so many factors.
Would you also say, I suppose it's also taking more of a proactive approach as opposed to, reacting to it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, there's so many things that don't actually have to cost that much money that everyone can do.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think that to be healthy is expensive, and that's just so untrue.
Yeah.
And not only that, though, same with your industry, is the priority, isn't it? It's like, what is a priority to you?
Yes.
Is it a priority to have the fancy car and like a Louis Vuitton handbag and be really unwell?
Yeah.
Or is it a priority to just have, the things that will help you get by, but in order to be able to have the funds to be able to fund a healthy lifestyle?
Okay. No, that's an excellent point. Now, I suppose a little one part of your actual podcast recently, which I was really fascinated about, and it's probably something I think I kind of thought about it, but it kind of ties in really well to gut health, is I suppose your strategies to combat overseas travel infections and pains. I mean, that's an area which like a lot of people, when they go traveling, they experience. There's always some story. Everyone's got some story when they went to some country, like a country in Asia or South America. Oh, yeah, somewhere, yeah. I suppose, can you further expand, I guess, some of your key strategies you use to combat those issues? And I suppose things that you need to be aware of when traveling to, as I said, continents such as Asia or South America.
Oh, that's such a good one. So, I mean, yeah, definitely like the Asia, South America, that kind of place. There are certain, obviously, firstly, their water quality is not as good. So naturally, it's a breeding ground for parasites. And so that's the big one, the parasites. And unfortunately, even if you try and only drink bottled water and wash your hands and stuff, like, because they use it to wash all their fruits and vegetables and stuff like that, naturally you could become exposed. But what's most important is that, because obviously there are plenty of people that go to Southeast Asia and they don't get sick, but then there's people like me who was always so vulnerable, I'd get sick every time, and that's because your gut health is compromised. So honestly, if there's one take home everyone needs to get from this, go see your naturopath 4 weeks before you go overseas, so that I can actually prepare your gut for what's about to come. Because there's so many things you can do to strengthen your gut, but also little things you can take with you whilst you're overseas that will help to prevent those things.
And again, it's probably going that sort of proactive approach, not, I suppose, like, for example, I know some people obviously would travel some of this stuff to prepare, but like, I think sometimes I've taken the approach where I'm always thinking of like, okay, if things go literally to shit, what things can I take? Oh, I'll bring Imodium, or I'll bring this, or like when there are probably other ways which obviously I could, prevent it just by incorporating some different strategies, or like I said, preparing a gut for what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, having that little toolkit, like, honestly, people would probably laugh if they saw the toolkit I brought to Greece with me a few weeks ago, because I had about 20 or 30 things that I brought with me. It was so naturopathic. But you know what? I used almost all of it. It made things easier.
Yeah. No, great. Well, and just to remind, that's your second episode. You kind of touched on it. So, I suppose if you want to find out more about some of those sort of strategies, please tune in. So, I suppose a good little segue into one of my next topics is allergies. Can you first explain to those what allergies are? Is one, like, sort of misconception I'm sure is sort of made a lot, is that people think it's always just to do with food. So
True, yeah. So, and I guess, so we're talking about allergies broadly here, so foods and pollens and all that kind of stuff, and
Correct.
coming into spring, yeah. So, basically allergies are a IgE response, immunoglobulin E, whereas an intolerance is IgG. So basically, that's something that is an instant response to something that your body doesn't like because you've become desensitized. So it's basically, we have these things in the body called mast cells, and they, what we call degranulate, and then you get this big histamine influx, and therefore you get the reaction. And you know, that could be as minor as a skin flare up, or like, you know, something going on with your gut, to obviously anaphylaxis where you have to go, it's an emergency.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, very, I suppose you've actually just talked about how the body reacts, so I'll go straight to my next point.
Yeah.
What would you say, I suppose, fundamentally causes it, and what are the ways, I suppose, you can prevent them from, I suppose, your point of view, as opposed to, like, I suppose, more conventional ways?
Yeah, great question. I love this. And just a little self-plug, I do have an ebook on how to naturally reduce histamine.
Yeah, let's hear it.
But yeah, so basically, once you are desensitized, you can never completely reverse that.
Yep.
However, there are so many things obviously we can do to prevent that from happening in the first
Yes,
place. But secondly, if you do have it, there are so many dietary and lifestyle things we can do to significantly decline your reaction.
Okay.
So if we were to talk about hay fever, because obviously it's hay fever season now, there are specific foods that are high in amines, and they can increase your histamine. And so particular foods are things such as cheese, cured meats, wine, you know, basically a cheese platter. Yeah, and then a side of strawberries, and you've completely topped yourself of histamine. So, and that's the thing, is that there are actually some really healthy foods that are high in histamine, or amine, sorry. So, you know, just being mindful of those foods and reducing those, but then increasing other bioflavonoids or polyphenols, which are basically plant compounds that are protective in some way. There are certain ones that can actually reduce histamine.
Yes.
So a really good one is pineapples. They contain bromelain, which is a plant enzyme that we actually use therapeutically to help reduce histamine.
Okay.
On top of that, on a more naturopathic level, there are some beautiful herbs that we use that can help to reduce histamine and that mast cell degranulation as well. So, like, we have, you know, naturopathically, we may make you up a liquid herb mix. A lot of people may not like the taste of it. Okay. So we might give people a capsule or a tablet that's been researched and formulated to help to reduce histamine. So it's basically a natural antihistamine. Yeah. And, you know, comparing it to conventional medicine, antihistamines such as, you know, Zyrtec and Nasonex and all those kind of things, like, whilst they do give people pretty instant relief, they shouldn't be used long term because they have other negative side effects, and even things such as poor memory and memory loss. So,
wow, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Okay, you've answered that very well. Now, so let's switch gears here a little bit. We've also got a little bit to cover. And now, one area which we touched on earlier, which I know you're very passionate about, is female health. Are you able to, I guess, further... I mean, you did touch on why you're passionate about it a little bit. But suppose, can you go more into those, your own, personal struggles and... so it's something you're very open about, and even most recently, I believe you actually were telling, you shared it on your social media, just some of your own experiences. You sort of touch on some of that, and so why I suppose you're very passionate about it. Yeah,
exactly. So as I was saying earlier, obviously, like, I suffered from a lot of period pain, and I started to become aware of endometriosis, and all my symptoms were really fitting that picture. And so that's why I got the laparoscopy done. And unfortunately, or even though, not unfortunately, it's still good news to be told everything's fine, but they didn't find anything. And they said everything was clear. And one procedure they did do that can sometimes help with period pain is they dilated the os, which is just this little opening that apparently if you open it up a bit, it can reduce the contractions. Didn't do shit.
Yep.
And so I've still suffered from period pains. Anyway, and over the years, I would go back and forth doing some ultrasounds, but I just couldn't bring myself to go and do another laparoscopy again. And I just kind of gave up a little bit for a while there and just was like, oh, well, this is just me. I'm just going to have to suffer these really bad period pains for the rest of my life. And you know what? That was one of my big passions when I was studying, was hoping that I could find an answer to myself, then so I can help other people as well.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's, what I do now. I do help a lot of women in that area, but I still am going on my own journey with it, trying to get answers. And just recently with the thing you were referring to, so I started getting more pelvic pain and things just didn't seem right. And I know my body very well. I also track my cycles, so I know what my cycle should be doing. I know exactly when I ovulate, and which is really important, something that all women should know. And anyway, so I knew something wasn't right, so I went to the doctor and I wanted to get some blood tests and an ultrasound. And he was a really great GP. I really like this guy, but he was, kind of just like, oh, it doesn't sound that big a deal. You've just come back from Greece. Your body's probably just under a bit of stress. And I'm like, but I've been having my period for 19 years now, and I think I know what's going on. Like, this isn't just like, a bit of stress. Anyway, and he's like, look, I'll write you a referral for ultrasound, but you probably won't need it. You'll probably just throw it in the bin anyway. I was like, to be honest, I think I will need it. I do want it. Long story short, went and got the ultrasound done. As they were doing the actual ultrasound, they were finding a few different things that was alluding to what looked like possibly fibroids or adenomyosis. And to be honest, I was actually stoked because I was like, finally, some bloody answers.
Some answers, yeah.
Yeah, and I know what I need to do naturopathically. There's heaps of things we can do to, help it and whatever. And the sonographer kept saying, are you sure no one's ever told you you've got fibroids? And I'm like, yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah.
And then, so I was like, I skipped into the GP the next week to get my result, and it was such a frustrating day because the result wasn't back yet. And even the GP was like, that's unusual. And this is a different GP, the one that, I hadn't seen this one before. It's
not like your regular GP.
Well, I don't really have a regular GP, to be honest, because I've moved to Geelong recently. Okay. So, the regular one from South Yarra, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So this particular one, he called up radiology and wanted to just get some sort of conclusion for me, seeing as I'd just waited an hour and 10 minutes. And he speaks to radiology and he's like, oh, it looks like more or less everything's fine. And I just wasn't having a bar of that. I was like, first of all, I want to see the actual report. And secondly, I don't agree with that because they were seeing stuff. And particularly one thing they saw was the Venetian blind effect, which is associated with adenomyosis or fibroids. And I said to him, I was like, that's funny because they were finding something. And he's like, oh, well, they would call you if it was something serious. And to them, something serious is cancer.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Or something that's really prominent. And I just wasn't accepting it. And I have done research. I've also heard about women not being told certain things. So back and forth, finally got my hands on that report by the end of the day, and sure enough, it said 4 centimetre pedunculated fibroid. Yeah. I just couldn't believe it. I was both stoked that I was right, but also pissed that had happened. Yeah. And then since I put that on my Instagram and Facebook, I had an influx of women reach out to me saying, oh my God, this happened to me, or oh my God, I think this is me, that kind of thing. Yeah. I had a friend say that 8 years ago, I think it was, she had been having symptoms and she got an ultrasound. They told her everything was normal and she was like, that's weird. I'm sure they found something when they were doing it. And it wasn't till 3 years later she actually said, can I please have a printout of that report? Oh, yeah. And sure enough, she had a fibroid. Yeah. And then I was also speaking to another friend who she's got really bad endometriosis. Yep. And one of her laparoscopies, so an actual surgery, they told her she didn't have endo, but she actually did.
Yeah.
And so she's had to have several surgeries. I've heard this so many times now. And then also with adenomyosis, I was reading recently that sometimes they wouldn't bother telling you have adenomyosis because the only real solution is a hysterectomy, so they don't bother telling people. However, naturopathically, that is not the only solution. There's heaps we can do.
Yeah.
So that's where my passion comes from.
No, and I suppose it probably really helps because it's more help in the sense that you're able to really relate to people. It sounds like so many women go through these, these every day. It seems like it's a very common sort of occurrence, and I suppose kudos to you, obviously not accepting it and obviously wanting to keep trouble. So you're obviously putting a clinician hat on. Obviously wanting to and surprisingly, although it doesn't seem that surprising to me anymore, but because we often will have a look at blood tests that a GP has done for someone, and sometimes because we have more time to spend with the client, of course that helps, because I guess sometimes their bloods just get skimmed over and they only look for what's highlighted in red or black. They don't look for optimizing things. But even then, I've seen people be missed for autoimmune conditions. That actually said that there was a result and no one told them. Really?
And it blows my mind.
Yeah.
And here they are feeling helpless because people the practitioners keep telling them that, oh, all your bloods are fine. I don't know why you feel like shit every day. So sorry, we've got nothing for you. And then I have a look at their bloods and sure enough, iron's low, vitamin D's low, your B12's all over the place, your white blood cells aren't optimal enough, you're prone to an autoimmune disease. They didn't look at all your thyroid markers. It's unbelievable.
The actual these obvious signs. And it's wow.
Yeah.
That's
sorry if I'm blowing your mind.
No, well, obviously, being a male, these are some things which I wouldn't really, I guess I wouldn't really look or be aware of. So it's quite amazing not amazing, but it's quite interesting and fascinating to find that out.
And I think it's really important that men do understand this so that they can support their female partners as well, because my husband, I've had to really try and coach him over the years of understanding what I'm going through, because he grew up with two brothers and mainly lived with his dad. And
this sounds like me a lot.
Oh, really?
I feel like I need the coaching too.
Totally. Maybe I should open that up as a male coaching service. Because he just didn't know what to do when I was in pain, because often my pain would come in the middle of the night and I'd have to get up and Ed would come out and I would be screaming on the kitchen floor. In that much pain, and he'd be like, oh, I don't know what to do. He's like,
get some water.
He would be like, just calm down. I'm like, don't tell me to calm down. And just little things that men can do, such as can I get you a heat pack, or even just saying, look, first of all, acknowledging the pain and just being like, oh my gosh, babe, that sounds awful. And then, is there anything I can do? Those two things will change your relationships. Seriously.
All right, for all the men listening, there you go.
Exactly. And the biggest don'ts is don't tell a woman to calm down. Don't walk away. Don't just tuck your tail in between your legs. Bloody man up and do something about it.
Good answers. I suppose actually this pretty goes to another little topic here, I suppose, is the use of the pill. Another big one, which I'm sure you'll have a lot to talk at, because I suppose that was something. I suppose the time when, I know actually a lot of friends of mine. I was actually talking with my colleagues today, and she was saying that in her early teens she was on the pill, and she would tell me all the negative effects, and probably some of them she wasn't aware of back then. And now, because she changed or got off the pill so early, the way how she used it, she reckons she was a different person, and even just some of her experiences. And she has friends now that are trying to get off the pill, and they're finding, I suppose, that transition coming off it, and there's all the effects that they're going through. I suppose, can you talk about the use of it, I suppose the negative effects, just so I guess people are aware, and I suppose your thoughts on it?
Oh, can we do 3 podcasts? Like,
Yeah.
seriously. This is a whole podcast in itself. So,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
to be honest, like, so I don't like to recommend people get off many medications. Like, I always just support them with whatever they're taking. But the
Sure.
one that I want women to get off is the pill.
Yep.
100%. So there are so many different reasons why, and of course I took it in my teens as well. But where do I start? So first of all, the biggest misnomer, a lot of women get put on the pill, not actually just for conception, but for many things. So like acne, PMS, PCOS, period pain, all sorts. And they are told wrongly that it will balance their hormones.
Yeah. Here we go. Yeah.
Which is completely untrue. Because, first of all, they're synthetic hormones. And interestingly, the estrogen that they use in the pill is more similar to testosterone. So the chemical structure of the synthetic hormones that they're using is not identical. Therefore, it's going to exert slightly different effects. So where do we begin of the list of side effects? I mean, first of all, the common ones are weight gain. That happened to me very quickly and easily. Secondly is an interesting, more research is coming out now that it is linked to depression. And even more so, they believe could be linked to teenage suicide.
Yeah, and that's something that's so big. I mean, we're talking, and I'm big. Like, this is, Mental November. I was saying I'm real passionate about but it goes in general. Like, youth suicide and depression so big these days.
It's huge, and there's just that's another topic as well that I'm very passionate about. And having gone through my own things with mental health, and I mean, when I was on the pill, I knew for sure that it was sending me into a spiral. And I personally, when I was 22, I went on the Implanon, which is like another form of contraception, the rod that they put in their arm.
The stick in there.
And that one's horrendous. So that caused... So for me, so that was when I first started dating my now husband, and I thought it'd be a good idea. And first of all, weight gain started to come on. Secondly, mood swings. But then it got so intense that I felt like I had this voice in my head. Like, I have this clear memory of catching up with Ed for lunch one day, and I was sitting there and I kept thinking, oh my God, he doesn't like me anymore. Like, it was just all these weird anxiety things that started.
And it's interesting for me listening to this, like, this is something I find very... I could not relate to this. I wouldn't understand how...
Exactly, yeah. And because isn't that the unusual thing as well, is that can you imagine if we flipped this and it was the man who took the pill?
Yes, and that's something they talk about.
Yeah, exactly, because they're looking at contraception, although it sounds a lot better, the one that they're looking at, because it's more of a physical thing where they block the sperm.
Yes.
So, but anyway... can you imagine, like, men having mood swings, putting on weight and crying at the drop of a hat? Or all these different things. So with the Implanon, it got to the point where, like, I had this full-on emotional breakdown and an anxiety attack, and I was at home on my own, and I got the phone and I actually dialed, like, I put the numbers 000 in, like I was ready to call an ambulance.
Really?
But I didn't. I managed to work myself out of it, but I actually could not breathe. Like, I was just having this insane anxiety attack. Like, I was working myself out, and I'm not an anxious person. Like, that's never been my tendency. Yeah. And I was getting suicidal ideations from it. Like, and it's horrendous that something like that so many women don't actually understand that. Yeah. So then going back to the pill, there are other side effects as well. So as you were saying with the friend that you know of who was talking about the pill and her friends, like, it is actually known that the pill can affect your decision making and even the men you're attracted to. So that's really fascinating.
Okay.
The other thing that's very problematic is in teenage life, when your estrogen receptors haven't quite fully developed, and that can go on till early 20s. And if you take the pill in that time, you impair that development. So if you had irregular periods in early teenage life, which a lot of women do because the estrogen receptors are still developing, so in some ways it's actually normal to have irregular periods for a while. However, they go to the doctor, they tell them that they've got irregular periods, they feel like it's not normal, so the doctor will put them on the pill. And then what happens is they stay on it for 10 years, they come off it later on in life, they want to have a baby, and all of a sudden they come off, and because that estrogen receptor's never fully developed, they come off the pill, and all of a sudden, irregular periods again.
Yeah.
And then they can't fall pregnant, and so on. And then the same thing's true for people who are put on it for PCOS or endo.
Yeah.
It's only a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
It's not fixing it.
It's not fixing it, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah, and it's great you meant. I know, I guess my first experience really seeing this as having, because I'm sure what we're just talking about with gut health and all that, it was all really related. Is an ex-girlfriend I had through school was she had all these, again, I think never had like sort of any this period pain or anything, and she had a lot of, then began to have, I think got the, what's the name of the
implant
rod? The implant, sorry. I was
the
going to say
rod.
the stick.
The rod,
The stick, and all of a sudden, a lot of these still like intolerances from like fructose intolerant, lactose intolerant, dust mites, like so allergies, so many things all just sort of came out of the blue. And I mean, I argued with her all the time because I think she just purely always just went to her GP and all the time, and I think there were I felt like there were a lot of other like issue things that just sort of developed, and it just kind of all just spiraled. And
exactly.
Yeah, so like it was. Yeah.
And it might not have been like that the rod directly caused the intolerances. It would have been that those hormones interrupt with your mental health, which causes stress, which then affects your gut. Like it would have been like this major flow-on effect. Yeah. And that's what I love about as a naturopath we do, is we keep going back until we find that root cause.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's good. Now, I suppose going back more broad, back to I guess closing questions. One question I like to always throw out is, what is one thing you wish you had known before you began your career?
Actually, how expensive my degree was going to be.
Okay.
Because like...
Did you put on the hex?
So, well, with Endeavour College would have been similar with Southern School. It's fee help, not hex. And so you get charged interest.
Yeah.
And so in total, my degree was around like 70-something grand.
Oh, wow.
And so, to be honest, like if I could go back, because I always would still be a naturopath, but what I would probably do is study nutrition at one of the universities.
It was like Deakin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like study at Deakin,
yeah.
where it would be only cost me like 20 grand.
A third of the price.
Yeah. And then just do post-grad in herbal medicine.
Okay, yeah.
So you can, like, say, for example, at Endeavour, like a lot of people have studied their nutrition degree first and then they go and add on herbs after.
Yeah.
It would actually still add on an extra year, but it would still be cheaper.
Yeah.
Which is just nuts. But, you know, like, look, I'm here now and it is what it is. But, yeah, I wouldn't change much else, though.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Okay. Now, I suppose another one kind of goes in here as well, is what would you say was your biggest failure and what did you do, I suppose, to learn from it?
Oh, biggest failure. And is that to do with anything?
Yeah, it could be of anything, yeah. Doesn't have to be just your career.
That's a really tough one. Like, I mean, I certainly, I'm the kind of person that really sees the value in everything that happened to me.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to, I don't know if I did mention this in my first podcast, let you in on a little secret, I have started writing a book, and I'll talk about this, but where a lot of my undiagnosed depression was when I was younger was things that I did in high school, you know, that just got me into a lot of trouble. And that was such a hard time for me, and I really had to build myself from ground up because like I literally fell out with all my friends. Like I didn't finish year 12, which is fine. Like, and to be honest, I think it is the reason why I am where I am today, because I had to really dig deep to get out of that stuff. So like I definitely wouldn't call it a failure, but it was a really big hurdle to overcome.
Okay.
And sadly, I honestly would say that some teenagers wouldn't have been able to get through that. Like it would have been too much. And I just think myself so lucky that I had the ability to get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say also, were you just kind of, were you mixed like with the wrong crowds, or was it?
A little bit.
Experimenting. It was like
Yeah,
that
look,
teenage, you know.
Yeah, and look, I'm the kind of person that always says, like, you never mix with the wrong crowd because you're a part of that crowd as well. Like, you're the wrong crowd too, you know, like,
Yep.
I mean, yeah, you eventually, like, I was probably the wrong crowd, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
But, yeah, like, they were just, you know, basically it just stemmed from, like, you know, like, just stupid teenage drama. Do you know what I mean? And then rumours started to go around that weren't true.
Yeah.
And then because I was so upset about all of that, then I did start making poor decisions. I was getting wasted. I would let people take advantage of me, you know, all those kind of things. And then suddenly, like, I just didn't know who I was anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just went from there.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm here, so...
No, absolutely. Curious, yeah. What advice would you give to someone that wants to pursue a career similar to yours?
Good question. So, first of all, strongly consider if it's really what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
First and foremost. There are some people that actually start naturopathy and realise it's not for them, and that's totally fine. I started journalism, I started real estate, and then I also went into Bachelor of Science thinking I'd be a zoologist until I found naturopathy. So, you know, it's always going to change, but it's an expensive choice.
As you found out.
Exactly. So first of all, really find out if that's what you want to do. A lot of people will go through this expensive degree after 4 years and be like, I don't even want to practice.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Sometimes you might be able to work as, say, like a health rep for a reputable company, or you might get into like the online space, which is a lot of what I do now.
Or supplements or
exactly. Development, which is great. Obviously, it's a good foundation. But there are some people who are like, I'm not doing any of it anymore. And that's an expensive degree to do, to not do any of it.
Yeah.
With that said, if you have that burning passion for health, like I have no doubt you'll love it. But to get into it, it's actually... So... You don't need really, obviously you just need like the usual stuff to get into a degree. And even then, like, I didn't finish year 12. I hope everyone remembers that. And when I went to study at James Cook Uni in Townsville to start a Bachelor of Science, I actually did what was called a tertiary access course, which is like a bridging course for one semester.
Yep.
So that's useful. There's lots of things like that. If you didn't finish your 12 or you don't feel like you've got the academic skills, there's so much available. So anyway, just say you're ready to go. You just basically call up where you want to study and enroll. It's pretty straightforward to start. Just be ready for the workload. That is, especially in naturopathy, it's extremely heavy workload. I don't know why, but the way that they do it, they cram so much in a semester compared to when I studied a Bachelor of Science. So like, full-time load, Bachelor of Science, 3 to 4 subjects, whereas at Endeavour I was doing 4 to 6 subjects a semester.
They do is it trimesters?
No, Southern School do that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the other thing. If you're in Melbourne and you want to just have a look into the difference between Southern and Endeavour, because they do things differently, and some people swear by one and the other. Like, to be honest, it is. I think they'd both have their pros and cons. But there's a lot of contact hours, so when you get into clinic it's mandatory. So unlike some uni lectures where you can go as you please
you
and
don't
catch
have to show up to every lecture. It's all automated.
Well, a lot of the later subjects in the degree of naturopathy are mandatory. So or sometimes there might be like you have to attend 80% or whatever, and so like in clinic it was 100% attendance, and like if one of us genuinely were sick, like it wasn't that we were sick, we just dreaded the whole process you had to do a makeup class. So it was a huge workload. Like, I'm actually one of the rare people that did it in 4 years. Most people do it in 6 to 8 years.
Yeah, wow.
Because it's such a huge workload. So I was often at uni over 30 hours a week. And on top of that, you're trying to
and that's a lot of contact hours. And I think people would appreciate that, and it's so hands-on. I think Anne mentioned when we were chatting as well, because that's very similar to my therapy as well. It's like, I suppose when it came to the anatomy, lucky for the subjects like anatomy doesn't change. The muscles are the muscles, the bones are the bones. Not saying to discover a new bone or something. But when it comes to that sort of more hands-on stuff, like those contact hours, like it shows if you're not there, you're not doing your clinic, and you can't wing, being in the clinic.
Exactly. You actually can't. And like, I'm the queen of winging it,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, my whole life I've gone through life just winging it. Like,
Yeah.
and I am a last minute girl.
Yeah.
I'm very good at getting, like, I was the kind of person that like everyone in my class was like almost finished their major assignment.
Yeah.
And it's like 2 nights before I haven't even bloody written a word.
Yeah.
And then I would knock it out the park and get 98%.
So, I wish I could.
Yeah, like I was just one of those people.
You get about maybe 67%. I'd be like, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I was lucky.
Yeah.
I think journalism did that to me because we were always running on deadlines and I'd just leave things to the last minute.
Yeah.
But I've lost my train of thought. But anyway, it is just, one of those things, just be mindful. Like I've got a couple of friends who are studying the degree. They've had babies like in the time that they've been there, and they're still just trying to finish this bloody long degree. So, but yeah, it's doable. And if you're passionate about it, do it. You'll love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Now, one question I like to ask every guest is work-life balance. So it's always very interesting to hear as everyone I've had on this podcast there, I suppose, different approaches or strategies. I suppose, talk me through. Actually, I was going to say walk, or pun intended. Walk me through, I guess, a day of yours, and I suppose how you actually balance everything, whether it's around your own exercise, your coaching, work, life in general.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
Work-life balance is non-existent for me,
Yeah.
to be honest. But I've found a way around. Like, I've found
Okay.
a way that works for me.
Yes.
I personally, as much as like I would love to be a structured person, like I said, I'm a winging it person. I definitely, my favourite thing of all, if there's one recommendation, everyone must have a whiteboard.
Okay.
That is my number one thing I cannot live without. In fact, I have 2 now.
Two?
So I have one like medium-sized one that I have now divided into 4 columns. And one is naturopathy. So like all my clinical stuff. One is my herbal teas.
Yes.
So all the stuff I have to do for that. And then one is like personal life. So, okay, I need to buy a light bulb, or something like that.
The shopping list, the grocery list.
All of that. And like, there'll be even also like a wish list. Like, Ed and I really want to floorboard our house. Like, so that'll be on there kind of thing. And then one thing I remember learning, and I unfortunately can't remember where I got this inspiration from.
It's just the last day,
so one thing though I do is when you cross off something on the list, don't rub it out. Actually leave it crossed out for a week, because it shows you how much you've achieved that week.
Okay.
Because a lot of people will delete it off their list.
Because they think it's done.
But like then you don't have as much sense of satisfaction and achievement. So that's a really good one. The other little trick that I do, and I just came up with this idea myself, and interestingly, since this idea, I've started to read other successful entrepreneurs who do similar things to this.
Okay.
So I started doing this when I studied, when I had heaps to do. I would break it down into time blocks. And I would set a timer for each one. Okay. So I'm a big fan in making things a game. Yeah. So, for example, say I had like 5 assignments due in a month and I needed to do X amount of study for this and whatever, and I would like list out everything I needed to do. Yep. And for that day of study, I would then compartmentalize that into the amount of time I had. So say I had 3 hours of the day that I was going to do on this, I'd say, right, 30 minutes to nutritional biochemistry, 25 minutes to deleting emails, or like, that kind of thing. And that's often the most successful way that I get through everything now, because I do have a lot on my plate, I genuinely do. So I have to do stuff like that. The other little thing that I do, like my husband will joke that I'm not like the tidiest person. I love things being clean, and I'm certainly not messy either, but I will gladly, eat dinner, leave the plate there and not clean it for the next hour. Just little things like that. Okay. Whereas like he likes things done really quickly. Yeah, sure. Anyways, but say there is a bit of stuff to do in the kitchen and it's just all overwhelming. I've got so much to do. I cannot be bothered cleaning the kitchen right now. I'd play this game called 10 Things. And I'm like, right, I'm only allowed to do 10 things. So I'll like put 10 things away and then go off and do my other thing. And that gives me some sort of sense of achievement.
Okay.
Or I'll play 10 minutes and I'll set the timer.
Wow, this is getting really...
Yeah. I'll like set the timer for 10 minutes on the microwave clock so it beeps at me when it's finished.
Really?
I'm like, okay, I've only got 10 minutes to clean the kitchen.
Yeah.
And when it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
So just compartmentalizing the day and you'll realize how much you can get done.
That's really interesting, I suppose, coming from someone that it's very much like someone wings it, I suppose. So these are really interesting strategies.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. Yeah, I have to do stuff like that. Otherwise, I just don't.
Yeah.
You know, some people are very like structure. They're very much, love routine, and I've just never been that kind of person. Mm-hmm. And I've just accepted it.
No, and I must say, I'm a bit similar to you in the sort of sense. I think how I am a little bit, like, cause I'm sometimes like that, very much like on the fly. Those when you have your schedule, like I'm all over the shop. I don't have, I suppose, set hours, for example, some days. So, so I think that's a really good, some really good advice. And I like these ideas of having, time limits and, and probably. Put a kick up my backside to get things done and not like, as you said, like, leave a dish there and then come back. It's like, okay, 10 minutes, get this done.
Absolutely. There's a really good TED talk, and like when I watched it, I was like, that's what I do. Like, So there's this TED talk on this guy who I think he had ADHD.
Okay.
And so he struggled in school real bad. And I can't remember whether someone told him to do this or he discovered to do it. And he had to break everything into 5-minute blocks because that was the only attention span that he had.
Yeah.
And now he's based like his whole life around this 5-minute theory where he's now learnt several languages. He's like done so much because he will commit just 5 minutes every so often to something.
Yeah.
But 5 minutes every day rather than half an hour once a month is still more.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, absolutely. Now, I suppose another little closing question is one little curveball question I like to throw around every episode. Now, I was going to say if you were a podcast host, but you are. So let's say, you are the host.
Yeah.
What would you have asked yourself that I haven't already asked you?
I reckon I would have like thrown in, and I guess I know some people like are more sensitive and like don't want to ask the wrong question, but I would have like thrown in the question like, why are people so skeptical of naturopaths? Because, let's face it, a lot of people are. And I'm very, I went through a phase of being very defensive. Yes. Because as, naturally I love what I do, but I do understand why people are skeptical because they're, as we said in the podcast when I interviewed you, obviously there are people who have said they're a naturopath and they're not, so they give us a bad name.
Yeah, bad eggs in the basket.
Yeah. At the same time, like there's lots of different types of naturopaths. I've always stood my ground as being an evidence-based naturopath to the best that I can. Obviously, there's things in clinic that you do that you can't really research, but works.
Yeah.
But for the most part, very much an evidence-based person. I don't practice homeopathy, iridology, flower essences. I certainly don't do crystal healing or anything like that. And look, there are those extra things that some people just add on, each to their own though. Some people love that stuff and they feel like it works, and I'm a big fan of the placebo effect. The placebo effect's so powerful, and if there's a way that you can somehow harness that while still being ethical,
of course.
That's phenomenal. That's why I preach meditation, because you can become your own placebo.
Okay. No, well, you've answered it very well.
There you go.
All right, perfect. Now, well, before we go on to our Revo PT signature 20 questions, before we get into that, where can our listeners connect with you online?
Awesome, thanks for asking. So first of all, I'm very active on Instagram at Jade Walker Health, or there's the tea page, which is Jade Walker Tea. I am very active on the Jade Walker Health on the stories. I do a lot of stories on what I do day to day, and people love that. Obviously, I've got my website, jadewalker.com.au.
Yep.
That's got lots of blogs and ebooks, my online store, all sorts of bits and pieces, and of course you can book your consults through there as well.
I believe there's a special offer at the moment.
Oh yes, you are right. So I've never actually done this before. So for the month of October, I'm offering 50% off.
Okay.
Yeah, which is huge. Like
That is huge.
Yeah. And it's been amazing. Like the good thing about it is I've allowed more access because our profession isn't cheap. And there's several reasons why. Obviously we don't get subsidised.
Yes.
There's a lot of overheads and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And we need to support ourselves, you know, so that we can keep doing it. Anyway, but at the same time, it really reduces the accessibility. So I just really wanted to just give that little window of opportunity for other people to come in, because then of course your second consult's only 30 minutes, so it's naturally half the price of your initial anyway.
Yes.
So the code is SPRING if people want to put that in at the checkout, and they'll get 50% off, which is like, I won't be offering it after the end of October. If people want to take the opportunity, do it.
Get on it. Okay. And your clinic, you were based in Geelong?
I'm based in Geelong. I do most consults remotely anyway. Like that's the beauty of what I do is, and also with prescriptions, they get it sent to their door, and we just do it via Skype, and you know, we can pretty much do everything that way that I would do in person anyway. Okay. People can come and see me in Geelong if they want to, but not everyone wants to travel. Yeah. And then every now and then I do practice in Melbourne at Tidal Flow Yoga in Oakley, which is where I used to practice. Okay. So
you got something coming up this weekend, is that right?
Yes, I am actually practicing there on Sunday. I've got a few spots left if you're releasing this before Sunday.
Fair enough. But okay, very good. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, that's a great little. Let's close off here. So, as I said, we've got our Revo PT signature 20 questions. So, as I said, 20 sort of quick fire, rapid, responses.
Yeah. Okay, go.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Question number 1: smoothies or juices?
Smoothies.
Question 2: apples or oranges?
Oranges.
Oh, Question 3: acai bowls or granola bowls?
Oh, I'm not a big fan of either, to be honest. Like, I'm not a cold, sweet breakfast person. I'm much of a savoury person. But if I had to choose, acai bowl, because they're pretty and a bit more exciting. Yeah. More antioxidants.
Now, question 4, this one, we ask everyone this one, but do pineapples belong on pizza?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Big fan.
Nice, I like it. Question 5, chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Yeah. Question 6, 3 things you can't live without.
Lip balm. Tea. And combining the two, my husband and Millie, my dog, my Groodle. Like, literally, obviously I couldn't live with my husband, but I could not live without my dog. I absolutely love her.
Yeah. No, good answer. Okay. Question 7, favourite sports team?
Hawthorn.
Okay.
More like Hawks. That comes from my husband and his family. They love Hawks, so naturally I just fell into that. Okay. Yep.
Fair enough. No judgment.
No, so. My favourite player, and he's gone now, was Cyril Rioli.
Okay, yep, Cyril Rioli.
Yeah, he was my favourite. Like, I just always loved him.
Yep.
He's gone now.
Okay. Most annoying habit? My
most annoying habit? I'm sure my husband could list a few. Oh, I know it. So I've been doing this thing my whole life and I cannot control it. I love to move my feet. Like, so if I'm like laying on the couch or like in bed, I'll like do, you know when cats do that thing in their bed and they like get their paws and they slowly like make their bed in some weird way? Okay. It's almost like I'm doing that with my feet where I'm like slowly moving them, and it's very discomforting for me. Okay. Or I shake my feet up and down. Like, I'm that kind of person that bounces my foot up and down when I'm talking to someone. Oh, okay, yeah, like the drummer foot. Yeah. And my husband can't stand it. He's like, stop it. He calls me rubby foot. Like, rubby foot. I can't stop. So that's probably my biggest habit. Okay. Yeah.
What's that? Annoying habit. Biggest of us. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
I mean, yeah, annoying, yes.
Yeah. All right. Question 9. Favourite movie?
The Intouchables. Have you heard of that?
I have. Yeah, that's who's that got in it again?
I don't know the names of the actors, but it's
a foreign film.
Yeah, it's French.
Yeah, French. Yeah. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, that's funnily enough, like my husband has this thing where he always plays old movies. Yeah. And I'm like, not another bloody 80s or 90s movie. Like, I just can't do it. and then on top of it, this one he wanted to show me was in French. I was like, oh, hell no, I'm not going to like this.
Yeah.
And it ended up being my favourite movie.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a true story as well.
That's what it is too. Agreed. Favourite pastime?
Or probably going to my family's holiday house in a little bay called Venus Bay in South Australia.
Yeah, know it.
And unfortunately, because it's so far away for us now, I can never go there, and I just really miss going there. It's beautiful.
No, fair enough. Question 12. One word to describe you.
Passionate.
Yeah, I agree with that. Question 13. What 3 things would you take on a desert island?
Oh, 3 things. It's funny, I often think about this to myself and like I can never answer it. I'd have to say there would be like some really delicious savoury food. Okay. Because I'm such a savoury fiend. Like savoury and salty food. Yeah. I can't really think what it would be. Maybe like even, no, I don't know. What else? My Thermomix. If I could plug it in, that is. Because although I'd need all the food, I could like go pick coconuts and papayas.
Good.
And oh my god, this is brutal. I don't like this question. Herbal tea.
Yep.
I don't know.
Fair enough. Good. Okay. Well answered.
Such a hard one.
It is. Question 14. Favourite holiday destination?
Italy. For sure.
Any particular city or?
Oh gosh, they're all so different and gorgeous and stunning. Positano was really beautiful. We stayed in. We actually stayed at the top of Positano in this little village called Nocelle, which is like a mountain at the top, and it just had that real like vibe of, you know, hardly anyone could speak English. Like it was just that kind of vibe. Just beautiful. But Florence was really stunning as well.
Lovely. 15. This will be a good one for you. Signature dish.
Hummus.
Really?
Yeah, everyone loves my hummus. Like I've made it over 100 times.
Greek myself. Okay. Love to test that.
Yeah, no, honestly, like everyone's like, it's the best hummus in the world.
Very good.
Recipe on my website.
All right, we'll look it up. Question 16. What's the best Wi-Fi name you have seen?
I wouldn't know. Like, I don't pay attention. I genuinely don't.
Question 17. Do you have any superstitions? And if yes, what are they?
No, I don't have any superstitions. With that said, I guess one thing that I can never explain, but like it just, I just do it, is whenever I make space for something, all of a sudden so much opportunity flows my way. Yep. Like, so for example, like the classic was when I hadn't been putting a lot of effort into my tea business anymore, because like the tea room was just a bit of a shambles. Like I hadn't really organised it properly lately, and I hadn't also been getting many sales either. So I was just like, whatever. And then one day I just had this motivation to completely overhaul the tea room, and like magic, like I just started getting all these orders. Yeah. And I didn't even advertise. Yeah. I was like, what the hell is this? Yeah. And since then I've found the same thing happen. Like if I just put more effort into focusing on my practice, I get more clients. Like just where energy goes, everything flows, and I don't know how to explain it, but I do believe that.
Yeah. Good answer. Now, question 18. Fill in the blank here. If you were not a naturopath, you would be a...
actor.
I like it.
Always wanted to be an actor.
Nice. Question 19. Favourite word in English?
Quintessential.
Quintessential. I like that. That's a good one.
My husband jokes that I love that word. I always use it.
Question 20. The best one, my favourite. What is the most ridiculous fact you know?
I don't know. You would know I've got a million facts that aren't ridiculous.
Let's hone in on one. Give us like
I've got heaps. Like one that's actually ridiculous and kind of like doesn't matter. I really can't think. But one fact that I tell people is that there actually is a use for the appendix.
Okay.
And so a lot of, it was often thought that the appendix serves no purpose, and so obviously, and it's a life-threatening, like I don't have my appendix, I got it taken out in England when I was on holiday.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you meant in the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, but the appendix we now understand actually does serve a purpose, and it's very important for your gut microbiome because it serves as like a backup drive for your bacteria.
Yes.
So if you get sick or you have antibiotics and you wipe them all out, then the appendix can squirt a little bit back in. It's definitely not a ridiculous fact, but it is a fun fact.
Yeah. No, we'll take it. There you go.
I can't think of any ridiculous facts.
We'll take it. To be honest, I don't really know much about appendix, even though all I know is that usually they get taken out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, very good. All right. Well, we'll close it there. So thank you very much for joining me. Like I said, this is episode 108 of the Your Revolution podcast, and as I said, we'll tune in for the next one. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Signing off.